Welcome to Tennessee's at-home learning series for literacy. Today's lesson is for all fifth graders out there, though everyone is welcome to tune in. This lesson is the fifth lesson in this week's series. My name is Ms. Thompson, and I'm a fifth grade teacher at Venus Stewart Elementary in Gallatin. I'm excited to be your teacher for this lesson. Welcome to our classroom. If you didn't see any of our previous lessons, you can find those lessons at www.tn.gov/education. You can still tune into today's lesson if you haven't seen our others. Now, today we'll be finishing and continuing reading our Chinese fable, Why the Dog Hates the Cat. But before we get started, you need a few things to fully participate. You'll need one piece of paper, a pencil, a surface to write on, and a marker or a highlighter. And you also want the student pack for ELA grade 5, lesson 20, and you can find that at www.tn.gov/education. I'll give you a few minutes to prepare for our time together today. Now, in today's lesson, we'll be finishing the Chinese fable, Why the Dog Hates the Cat. Remember, a fable is a short story that teaches us a lesson. And yes, today we must find out why the dog hates the cat. We've been getting closer and closer all the time, and I think we're ready to solve the mystery today. Before we get started reading, though, I would like for us to take a look at a student's response from our independent practice from our last lesson. This will help us remember what we read and get our brains ready for today's learning. Now, if you remember, you were to write an opinion piece, and that opinion piece was this. You were to write as if you were Blackfoot, the Wang's faithful dog, and you were to write about their adventure, and you were to include all the thoughts and feelings and descriptive words. You were to write about their adventure, and you were also going to continue the story starting at the moment Tabby slipped into the house to make the Wangs happy. Do you remember that independent task you had? It's a narrative, but you're writing as though you were Blackfoot. So I want to take a look at a student's work that was submitted to me with this task. Remember, this is our writing task, pretending we were Blackfoot. Here is the student response. I stood there in the dark, staring at Tabby with my eyes wide open. I couldn't believe what she was saying. She had known all along that Mrs. Chu had stolen the magical golden beetle. She had let Widow Wang, Ming Li, and me starve. Remember, me is Blackfoot the dog. How could she not say something when the villagers would not give us their scraps? I muttered under my breath. But as Tabby told me of her plan to take back the golden beetle, I remembered that she was my friend. We had been through good times when food was plentiful and bad times when food was scarce. I could feel the excitement begin to rise. I wagged my tail and told Tabby, of course I will go with you to get the golden beetle back from the Chews. In my excitement, I forgot I was a dog and not as nimble as a cat. Tabby, how will we get the golden beetle? I asked. I can't move as quickly as you, and I'm not as sly as you, I told her with worry in my voice. Tabby, who has always seemed to have everything figured out, explained her plan to me and how we would work together to get the golden beetle back to the Wangs. At midnight we go, hissed Tabby, more determined than ever to retrieve the golden beetle. As the clock struck midnight, Tabby and I set out on our adventure. We quietly walked down the road from the Wangs' house as if we were tiptoeing into an unknown world. Tabby and I snuck in and out of doorways and alleys as we made our way through our village. So far, no one had noticed us, or at least no one had given us any attention. But why should they now? I thought to myself. They didn't before. Last paragraph on this page. Once we made it to the river, I looked at Tabby with questioning eyes. What now? I asked her. I can swim and enjoy the water because I have since I was a puppy. But you're a cat and you don't like to be in the water. Tabby sat down and licked her paw and then said, I know that, which is why I'm just going to ride on your back, Blackfoot. What? How? I exclaimed. Just trust me, Blackfoot, said Tabby. I stood there for a moment and all the memories of our friendship came rushing back. I admitted it was crazy, but I trusted Tabby and we had no other choice. I lay down and let Tabby climb on my back. Tabby, ever so gently, got on my back, and off we went across the river. Tabby didn't weigh much since we had eaten we hadn't eaten in some time because Mrs. Chew had stolen the golden beetle. However, I was beginning to get tired from lack of strength. I just kept saying, "We're getting the beetle back. We will eat wonderfully again." This motivated me to swim harder. We finally reached the other side of the river, and without even shaking the water off my body, I ran with Tabby to Mr. and Mrs. Chew's house. Once we reached it, I stood up tall on all four legs so Tabby could again get on my back. Once there, Tabby used her strength and bounded up the wall. "Stay here and be quiet," she whispered to me. I waited for what seemed like an eternity. Time dragged slowly by as I kept quiet, and I could, while Tabby was behind the wall on the Chew's house. I ran off rats, growled at cats, and stared down other dogs just to keep us safe, so we could get the golden beetle and make our way back to the Wangs. Won't they be surprised, I thought, and started daydreaming about how happy the Wangs would be when they saw Tabby and I return with the golden beetle. About that time, I heard a loud bang and looked up to see Tabby jumping down from the wall. "Go, go, go," she yelled. We both started running like gazelles being chased by lions. Once at the river, Tabby jumped on my back, and I swam as hard as I could in order to make it to the other side. On the other side, we ran through the streets of the village without caring who saw us. "Tabby," I panted, "can we slow down?" "No," she screeched. Finally, as we ran up the hill to the Wang's house, we slowed our pace. We stopped just outside the window and peered in to see the Wangs tossing and turning. "Oh, Tabby," I said, "look how pitiful and hungry they are. But we have done it. We have saved the day by returning the golden beetle to its rightful home." Tabby turned and looked at me. "Yes," she purred, "but let me go in and show them. You are still wet from the river. Plus, you know how excited you get when something good is about to happen." I stood there and looked at her. She was right. I was a mess and could be overexcited sometimes. "Okay, Tabby," I said, "you go and show them the golden beetle and that we've returned it. I will watch through the window and then come in after the Wangs are happy to have it back." I watched Tabby gingerly walk into the house. She confidently strutted her way across the floor. Tabby jumped on the Widow Wang's bed, which woke the Widow Wang up. Tabby dropped the golden beetle on the bed in front of Widow Wang and sat down on the bed. "Oh, Tabby," Widow Wang yelled, "you have returned our most prized possession." Tabby rubbed her body against Widow Wang. It was at the point I started to go into the house when I heard Widow Wang say, "Oh, Ming Li, look at what Tabby has done for us." I stopped in my tracks. Tabby has done for us? What did Widow Wang mean? I helped get the golden beetle back as well, I said to myself. Tabby turned and looked at me with a glint in her eyes. She purred even louder and rubbed her body against Widow Wang's and Ming Li's legs. Widow Wang said, "Tabby, you will get the first food now that the golden beetle is back." I couldn't believe it. I had been Tabby's friend through everything. I had helped her get the golden beetle back for the Wangs so our bellies could be full again, and we could be a happy family once more. Now I knew I had been used. The longer I stood there and watched them love and praise Tabby, the madder I became. Never again would I trust Tabby. I had been used for Tabby's gain, I said to myself between gritted teeth. Now remember, that was a student's work of the task I gave you on our last lesson to write as if you're Blackfoot. So that wasn't the end of our fable at all. Don't be confused. That was a really fantastic example of student writing. I like how the student put themselves into Blackfoot's experience. I also liked how the student used plenty of dialogue. If you notice, there's so many quotes as they're talking to each other. "Tabby, how will we get the golden beetle?" I asked. "I can't move as quickly as you, and I'm not as sly as you." All of those things. I'm also happy to see that she used really good words to describe her characters. This is a good example. I watched Tabby gingerly walk to the house. That's a great word, right? It really shows me how she's walking to the house. I bet your writing is just as good as this, and you should share it with someone in your home. They'll probably love to read it, or better yet, you can read it to them. Great job on that student response. Now, today we're going to finish our fable and really find out why the dog hates the cat. But I'm going to back up just a bit and reread a little of what we read in our last lesson, and then we're going to get into the new stuff. We'll start at a place where Tabby and Blackfoot have just returned home from their midnight adventure. They had gone to retrieve the golden beetle from the Chew's house, and when they arrived, the cottage door is locked, and Widow Wang and Ming Li are asleep. Tabby tells Blackfoot that she will go inside and make them happy. She has the golden beetle after all. Before we begin reading, though, today, I would like for you to think of a time that someone's actions surprised you. Because of what they've done is not what you expected of them. Maybe it's out of character. Maybe it's so out of character that you're wondering if you ever really knew them at all. I'll give you a moment to think about that. Maybe you've never had this experience before, but either way, I want you to think about how it might feel as we read our text today. Let's dig in. I'm right here. The two adventurers reached the river just as the sun was rising above the eastern hills. When they reached the cottage, the door was shut. The Widow Wang and Ming Li still sleeping a fitful, hungry sleep. They had given up, whispered the cat. I will go inside and make them happy. So when Tabby and Blackfoot got home, they noticed that the door to the cottage was shut and they couldn't get in. Where were Widow Wang? What were they doing? Widow Wang and Ming Li. Yes, they were sleeping, but were they sleeping well? No, they were not. They were not sleeping well because they were hungry. The good food from the golden beetle had been gone for a while at this point. And since they couldn't get into the house, what did Tabby say she would do? Yes, she said, I will go inside and make them happy. And in our last lesson, guys, we discussed that Blackfoot is just too big to do many of the things that Tabby has been able to do on their adventure. At this point, he knew that he was just too big to go inside of the house and had to wait as Tabby went in. So let's keep reading in this fable and finish our story up today. I'm right here. So saying, she sprang lightly through the window, which, alas, was too small and too far from the ground for the faithful dog to enter. See, Blackfoot was right. Tabby slipped in an open window. There was no way for him to get in that way. He was too big and the window was too high up. What words does the author use to describe how Tabby got in? Yes, sprang lightly. Can you picture that in your mind? Those are really good words for a cat. Here I am, Mrs. Wang, meowed Tabby, brushing against the sleeping widow. And here is the treasure you're weeping for. I have rescued it and brought it back to you. Wait, hold on. What did Tabby just say to Widow Wang? Yes, she woke her up and told her that she had the treasure you're weeping for. What's the treasure? Yes, it was the golden beetle. Now, remember, Tabby carried it back between her teeth all the way from the Chew's house. Why do you think Tabby calls the golden beetle a treasure? I agree. The thing is priceless. It was a gift from the gods, after all. Okay, Tabby also says this. I have rescued it and brought it back to you. Who is she leaving out of the story? That's right. She's leaving out Blackfoot. Why do you think Tabby chose to leave him out? I'm not sure yet. I know either. We're going to have to keep reading to find out more. The widow, wild with joy at the sight of the beetle, seized the cat in her scrawny arms and hugged Tabby tightly to her bosom. Sounds like Widow Wang was happy to see Tabby, as I thought she would be. What words did the author use to describe how Widow Wang was at the moment? Yes, wild with joy. Look at that word, that phrase. This choice of words really helps the reader understand that Widow Wang is even happier than happy. How did Widow Wang react to Tabby? Yes, she was so excited that she seized her in her arms and hugged her tightly. Let's look at that word, seized. What do we think that word means? Well, seize means to take something with force. Capture is kind of also a good synonym. Can you see Widow Wang seizing her into your arms? So I would say taking with force. And why did she do this? That's right, because she's so happy. She's so excited that she captures her and holds her really, really tight. Very good. What word in this sentence tells us that it's been a while since Widow Wang has had a good meal? That's right. He says she pulled her up in her scrawny arms. That tells me that she's very, very skinny and she needs some meat on her bones. I'm moving on. Breakfast, son, breakfast. Wake up. Fortune has come again. We're saved from starvation. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think Ming Li was thinking at this moment? I bet he was really surprised and thinking, how could this be? Beautiful work. Soon, a steaming hot meal was ready. And you may well imagine how the old woman and her son, heaping praises upon Tabby, filled the cat's platter with good things. But never a word did they say of the faithful dog Blackfoot, who remained outside sniffing the fragrant odors and waiting in sad wonder. For all this time, the cunning cat had said nothing of Blackfoot's part in the rescue of the golden beetle. So, wow, a steaming hot meal was ready right away. But let's reread this part. The old woman and her son, heaping praises upon Tabby, filled the cat's platter with good things. Why are Widow Wang and Ming Li being so good to Tabby the cat? I agree. They think that she is the reason they have the golden beetle back. They're rewarding her for bringing it home to them. The author uses the word cunning to describe Tabby here. Do we see that word, cunning? Do you know what cunning means? Well, it kind of means to be sly and deceitful, only to get what you want. Do you think the word cunning is a good way to describe Tabby? Remember, sly, deceiving people. I think it's a great word to describe Tabby. Who is being left out, guys? Faithful old Blackfoot is being left out. And why? Well, Widow Wang and Ming Li, you don't have a clue how Tabby got the golden beetle back. They don't know that Blackfoot was a part of the rescue. As far as these two characters know, they just know that Tabby got the beetle back on her own. And where's poor Blackfoot at the moment? That's right, he's outside. And it kind of makes me sad because he's outside sniffing that yummy breakfast. Let's keep reading. At last, when breakfast was over, slipping away from the others, Tabby jumped out through the window. Oh, my dear Blackfoot, she began laughingly. You should have been inside to see what a feast they gave me. The widow was so delighted at my bringing back the treasure that she could not give me enough to eat, nor say enough kind things about me. Too bad, old fellow, that you're hungry. You'd better run into the street and hunt up a bone. What? This is awful. How do you think Blackfoot is feeling right now? Yes, I think he's feeling very betrayed by his friend Tabby. Do you think betrayed is the right word for Blackfoot's emotion? Yes, I agree. It's a perfect word, betrayed. I'm going to reread this paragraph, and I want you to listen for reasons that Blackfoot is feeling betrayed. I'll read slowly so you can jot them down as I read, and I'll give you a little more time when I'm finished. So get your paper ready. Oh, my dear Blackfoot, she began laughingly. You should have been inside to see what a feast they gave me. The widow was so delighted at my bringing her treasure back that she could not give me enough to eat, nor say enough kind words about me. Too bad, old fellow, that you're hungry. You better run out into the street and hunt up a bone. What words and phrases show that he feels betrayed? What words and phrases make you feel like he's betrayed? I'll give you some examples. Look at this. She laughed. She began laughing at him. She tells him, you should see what feast they gave me. She says that they kept saying kind words to her. Then she doesn't offer him anything. It says, too bad you're hungry. You better run out to the bone and you better run out to the street and find your own food. All those things tell me that he feels betrayed. Wow. Do you remember back in this lesson when we started today that I asked you to think of a time when someone acted a way that really surprised you? A way that was unexpected. Let me ask you a question. Do you think Blackfoot expected this from Tabby? I don't think so either. I bet he was stunned. Why do you think Tabby chose to take all the credit for rescuing the golden beetle? Now, this one is a hard question to answer because we really don't have any solid evidence from the text to tell us, so we have to infer or make a good guess based on what we've read and what we already know. Remember, inference, background knowledge plus text evidence. One reason might be that Tabby wanted to make sure that she was the first one fed, or that being the first one to bring the beetle back to Widow Wang meant that she would secure herself a place in the family food chain. She would always be guaranteed a meal. How do you think Blackfoot will react to Tabby's new personality? Let's keep going. Maddened by the trick of his companion, the enraged dog sprang after the cat, who took off like lightning, laughing down the alley. Rushing out into the street, Blackfoot barked the entire story of Tabby's treachery to the other dogs, at the same time advising that all self-respecting dogs should, from that time onwards, never befriend a cat. Of course, Blackfoot was mad. His friend, better yet his companion and fellow adventurer, had just treated him horribly. And how did he react to this betrayal? Yes, he told every other dog about it. Look at what it says here. He was mad. He was enraged. And he says he barked the entire story of Tabby's treachery to the other dogs. What do you think that means? What do you think that means? I think he was telling everybody, all the dogs that he knew, about how he was betrayed by Tabby. So Blackfoot was telling the other dogs how he no longer trusted Tabby, and they shouldn't trust cats either. Now, what was he hoping would be the outcome of his advice? Right. He was hoping that self-respecting dogs would no longer befriend a cat. Do you think that Tabby and Blackfoot's relationship could change this much? Me neither. Let's see how the author wraps up the story. Typically, a fable ends with an explanation of why things are different now because of the events in a particular story. I wonder if that's what the author did in this fable. I'm going to keep going. And that is why the descendants of old Blackfoot, whether in China or in the countries of the West, have waged continual war upon the children and grandchildren of Tabby. Well, guys, it looks like we might have solved the mystery. The fable ended with an explanation of why dogs all over the world hate cats. And the author even said continual war. Wow. Now, that's the end of our fable, and we know that Blackfoot intended his advice to last a very long time. And we read here that the descendants of old Blackfoot continue to wage war upon the children and grandchildren of Tabby. Now, use this sentence to help you define the word descendants. What do you think it means? What do you think the word descendants means? Yes, it means someone's children or grandchildren, and on and on. So the author really defined the word for us just in a later part of the sentence. So I'm thinking Blackfoot was really, really serious about this. Do you think the title here, Why the Dog Hates the Cats, fits our fable? I think it fits it just fine. Wonder what other titles we could come up with now that we know the whole story. Now, before we move into our guided practice for this lesson, I want you to think about something for me. Difficult times can sometimes change how people act. Why did the author use a story to teach us this lesson? How did the author use a story to teach us this lesson? Good thinking. Things like this can be hard to talk about. And by telling a story, particularly with animals that end up with all the trouble, it becomes a little less threatening for us as the reader. And of course, it's an entertaining way to learn a lesson. People have been using stories to teach for thousands and thousands of years. And I'm really glad we got to experience this one together. Now, let's take a few minutes to put our brains together and get you ready for your independent practice. I'm going to ask you a few important questions, so go ahead and grab your paper and get ready. Now, Let's look at our character charts again. I can't believe we've collected so much information. We have so much stuff here. We know all these things about Widow Wang, all of these things. A widow, Ming Li's mother, surprised by the gift, has a dog and cat. All these things we've gone over together. We talked about how she got the magic beetle and she wants food, and that she discovered the magic beetle had worked, and that the beetle is gone and hungry again. All of these things we've discovered. Very good. Now, if we look at Ming Li, we discover all of these things. I'm going to give you a few seconds to just read through these on your own. All of these things we know about Ming Li. Now, we also looked at Tabby the cat and Blackfoot the dog. Blackfoot the dog. Take a few seconds to read over these things on your own. Then, of course, we can't leave out Mr. and Mrs. Chu. Remember, all of these things we have from our prior or previous reading. Now, I want to go back to Tabby the cat and look at all these things that I could add to our chart. Gets all the credit for retrieving the golden beetle, gets full on Widow Wang's first meal, laughs at Blackfoot and tells him that he has to go to the streets, runs away laughing. She and her descendants will be hated by dogs forever. Now, all of those things we can add because we just read that today in our new reading. And if I look at Blackfoot the dog, I can even add more stuff. Doesn't get any credit. Stands outside and smells the food. He's shocked when Tabby comes and brags about Widow Wang's kindness. Forced to go into the streets for food. He and all of his descendants will hate cats forever. Now, all of these things we have charted over multiple readings of our fable. Great job with your character chart. This is something to be proud of, but I want you to keep it close by because you're going to need it for a minute. Now, I would like for us to slow down for just a moment, and I'm going to ask you a few questions to help you think deeper about all of our characters and how they've changed throughout the course of our story. We've seen each character really change as they approach the challenges laid out before them. Like we thought about earlier in our lesson today, challenges change people. Keep your paper right there and jot down your answers to my questions. Are you ready? Pause the video if you need to. Question number 1. What was the original problem? How did this problem impact the relationship between Widow Wang and Ming Li over the course of our story? Question 3. How did this problem impact the relationship between the Wangs and the Chus over the course of the story? How did this problem impact the relationship between the Wangs and their pets over the course of this story? How did this problem impact the relationship between Tabby and Blackfoot over the course of our story? Which relationship was impacted the least? Which relationship suffered the most in our fable? And the most important question, why does the dog hate the cat? I'm so glad we finally got a chance to answer that big question. Nice job on pulling all the information together. I think you're ready to move on to your independent work that connects to our learning today. Here's your independent practice. After our lesson today, I want you to take some time to complete a really cool activity. Please take notes as I read this independent practice. Why the Cat Hates the Dog is a Chinese fable that teaches us a lesson through the eyes of some very interesting characters. Widow Wang, Ming Li, Mr. and Mrs. Chu, as well as Tabby and Blackfoot, have all shown us that relationships can change a lot during difficult times. Throughout the story, we've seen this play out in each relationship. Characters treated each other in a variety of ways, and most characters ended up acting selfishly and damaging their relationships. Remember, this fable was told by a narrator, third person point of view. Now, here is your challenge. You are going to be the narrator and rewrite this fable. It's the same story with all of the same characters, but with a twist. Instead of approaching the problem of hunger in a selfish way, the characters in your version choose to be kind and caring. So I want you to think about this. Think about the way your characters react to the magic golden beetle. Think about how your characters will interact with each other. And think about what will change in your characters' relationships based on the way they treat one another. And last but not least, you get to give your version of the fable a new title. Now, to support you in your writing, use evidence from your character charts that we've collected over the last 5 lessons and the answers to your questions throughout our time together. Don't forget, you're rewriting this fable with a different ending. And in your ending, you're having your characters choose to be kind and caring, unlike the other fable, the original fable. I really enjoyed reading this Chinese fable with you over the last 5 lessons. I just knew we would eventually find out why the dog indeed hates the cat. I think this means I'll be looking at my dog and cat a little bit different from now on. Thank you as always for inviting me into your home, and I look forward to seeing you again at Tennessee's At Home Learning series. Have a good day.